I'm Richard Sarrett, and this is Out of Their Minds, a show about geniuses, crackpots, and original thinkers. We'll do our best to separate the harebrained from the brilliant, but sometimes it's hard to tell them apart. And sometimes they go hand in hand. After all, people thought Einstein was crazy back when he suggested that time and space could be bent. Today, a touchy-feely show. We'll hear about two inventions that'll send a shiver down your back. We're going to meet some fascinating people who've invented what's called the emotichair. It looks like a cross between one of those folding camp chairs and one of those massage chairs you'd find at the mall. Except for one difference. The emotichair enhances a deaf person's musical experience.
I think this is like an eye-opening, like this is what music feels.
But first, imagine that you're the mother or father of a 6-month-old daughter. Of course, she's adorable and smart. You're convinced that she's going to grow up and graduate at the top of her class. You're pretty sure she'll earn a PhD from Stanford and be named one of the brilliant top 10 by Popular Science magazine. She'll probably go into robotics or something like that and invent something that could change the world. And then this happens.
Oh, I can't believe I'm telling this. My dog wanted to eat. I grabbed the dog food can. I turned to look just in time to see Catherine standing up at 6 months, 2 weeks in her baby bathtub and diving headfirst onto the kitchen floor. Hard to say how many IQ points we lost there, but I can tell you she was, as close as we could tell, there was no damage. She had a little bit of black eyes, but thank goodness the bones of the head do not seal for a year. I was horrified and to this day incredibly humbled.
That's Sherry Kuchenbecker, mother of Catherine Kuchenbecker. Catherine's the subject of our first touch-sensitive story. And in spite of that early spill, she went on to surprise her parents time and time again. She started walking, talking, reading, and learning her times tables way ahead of schedule.
Some of the best advice I can ever give to parents is watch for violations of expectations among all children. And once you know you've got a child who's doing unusual things, watch like a hawk.
This is a story about violating expectations.
My name is Catherine Kuchenbecker. I'm an assistant professor of mechanical engineering and applied mechanics.
Today, Catherine works with robots, the kind of robots you find in operating rooms. Growing up, Catherine loved math. Her mom tells a story about the time they were together in the car, and Catherine suddenly started laughing to herself. Sherry asked her what was so funny. "I just realized something," the 4-year-old said. 2 3s is the same as 3 2s. Catherine attended a private school for gifted kids, the Merman School in Los Angeles. The teachers took note of Catherine's advanced math skills.
And they asked if she would move up, and her first response was, "No, thank you." And her teacher said, "Well, please." And she talked to me, and I talked to Catherine, and Catherine said, "No, thanks." So I explained to the teacher it wasn't a good choice. And the teacher said to me, "Well, let me show you this work." So she pulled out a page, and this was 5 years old, by the way. So it was a whole page of addition. And Catherine had gotten the entire thing wrong. Every one was marked X. And I said, "Well, there you see." And the teacher said, "No, look again." And I looked again, and what she had done is turned it into a page of subtraction, because that was much more interesting to her.
Catherine enjoyed her time at the Merman School.
The memory that stands out most was in first grade, and I was in a math class and working on a worksheet. I think it was a subtraction. And the principal of the school, Dr. Norman Merman, came over and saw that I was working very hard and looked at the pencil that I was holding and saw that it was really a mangy, awful pencil. Someone had chewed on it, and it had no eraser left.
And it was all chewed up, and the metal was scrunched, and Dr. Merman came by.
Dr. Norman Merman, the principal of the school, and he looked at me and he said, "Catherine, you know, math needs great tools." And he took out a brand new perfect pencil from his coat pocket and gave it to me and took away this chewed up, awful, no eraser pencil. And at that moment, I felt so valued. I must have been 6 years old. And to have the principal of my school show me that he valued my learning and wanted me to have a good pencil to do my math problems with. Just, I mean, even now, it's almost making me cry because it really showed me that teachers and adults in the world cared about me and wanted me to learn, and that that was an important endeavor, and that they were excited to see where I might take that knowledge.
Catherine took her knowledge to Stanford University, where she earned a PhD in mechanical engineering. These days, she works at the University of Pennsylvania at the GRASP lab. GRASP stands for General Robotics, Automation, Sensing, and Perception. She's interested in the link between virtual reality and our sense of touch.
I want us to be able to capture the way that things feel to the same level of excellence that we can capture how things look.
This is called haptography. That is, photography for our sense of touch.
And you know that there are so many different properties that an object can have. And as soon as you imagine touching it, you can envision, is it soft? Is it smooth or rough? Is it sticky or pokey? Or if I squeeze it, is it compliant? And so all those different properties, it would be fantastic if we could capture those using what I would call a haptic camera, a touch-based camera, and store them on my computer and share them with other people to touch and interact with in the same way that they could how something looks.
Imagine you're looking at a kitten on your computer screen. You reach out and touch the screen, and it feels like, well, a kitten. This isn't theoretical. It already exists. Catherine has developed a touch-screen computer, something called the texture pad.
You hold a stylus and we can show you a picture of a certain texture on the computer screen, and then you can drag across it with the stylus, and we can make it feel almost exactly like the real piece of, say, plastic or fabric, and we'll put that real sample right there on the screen. And so when someone picks up a tool and drags across the screen for the first time, their eyes get really wide and they look at me like, oh my gosh, that was really good. Can I touch that again? And that's how I know we're onto something good here as well, because we can fool people. We can show them, let them experience a kind of sensation that they've never had before.
Let's say there's a picture of a pair of corduroy pants on the monitor. You run the stylus across the screen, and it goes da-da-da-da-da-da-da as the point travels across the tiny bumps in the fabric. Catherine hits a key, and now it's an image of a tree. You run the stylus across the screen. Now it feels like you're touching bark.
We have a lot of tours of elementary school students or blind students, and seeing their faces light up when they interact with a virtual environment through touch, and their recognition of the possibilities of what it could open up is very motivating, and it's probably the thing that I like to think about the most when I'm stuck in a research problem and trying to get inspiration about where to go next.
This is Allison Okamura. She's a professor of mechanical engineering at Johns Hopkins University. She was Catherine's postdoc advisor at Stanford. Allison also works in haptics and robotics, and according to her, Catherine's research changed everything.
Most of the field of haptics has to do with feeding back forces through basically a fancy joystick. And the problem with that technology is that you're really limited in how much force you can apply to a person. And as a result, all of those forces feel kind of squishy. A colleague called it Nerf world. Everything feels like a squishy Nerf football. And what Catherine's technology brings to the table is this acceleration feedback. And acceleration is things that happen fast. And so by feeding back acceleration information rather than the force, she brings a crispness to the feedback that is much more akin to the type of information that is transferred to the user when we interact with objects in our normal environment.
If you've ever played a Wii video game, then you've probably experienced computer haptics. When your virtual race car skids off the track, the controller in your hand vibrates. If Catherine and her research team have their way, that technology will soon be outdated.
Anytime you have a physical interaction in a game, I think the technology that we're working on could deliver much higher quality cues, haptic cues, than are currently available. And so if you were to take apart like a standard game controller, you would find a little DC motor that spins with a mass that's offset of the shaft. And so when it turns on, you feel that mass going around and around in a circle, like a washing machine with the clothes offset. And that's exciting when you're like driving a virtual car and you're like rumbling across the side of the road, or you hit something, or maybe you crash, or someone punches you, you can feel that. But there are a lot of other things you can feel that don't feel like a washing machine shaking. And so what we're excited about is that the kinds of haptic models and actuators that we use in my lab can portray a richer set of haptic stimuli. And so, for example, we can record a blast and then, or a piece of glass shattering, and then we can play it, and it will actually feel much more like those real physical interactions.
Catherine's research could also have huge implications for online shopping. Imagine surfing the web and being able to feel that t-shirt or pair of shoes you want to buy. It's an idea that could be worth millions of dollars. But Catherine's more interested in medical applications, specifically something called vibro-touch.
vibro-touch is a method of improving a robotic surgery system so that it provides haptic touch-based feedback to the surgeon during the operation.
In order to understand the potential impact of vibro-touch, we need to go back. In the beginning, we had open surgery. It was great because it allowed doctors to operate inside the patient, but it required large incisions and caused a lot of damage to healthy tissue. Laparoscopic surgery was, in some ways, an improvement. It used long, narrow tools, so it was less invasive, but it made things harder for the surgeon, who basically had to operate with chopsticks. Then, about a decade ago, robotic surgery came along. Now it allowed surgeons to control tiny robotic hands with joysticks and watch what they were doing on a video screen. This too has limitations. The surgeons can see what they're doing, but there's no physical connection between their hands and the tools. They can't feel anything. vibro-touch could change all that.
It attaches right on to a robotic surgery system. So we can take it over to the operating room and attach it within 5 or 10 minutes. And it adds just 3 main things. Sensors that are vibration sensors, accelerometers, and we put those on the robot arms near where the tools attach, so above the patient. And that way, anytime that the surgeon cuts something or hits the 2 tools together, it causes a little vibration that travels up the shaft of the tool and that we can detect. So as the surgeon, say, picks up a suture needle, there's a little click that you would feel if you were just holding pliers and picking things up off a table. You would feel the start of contact, and maybe if you handed the object to your other hand, you feel the end of contact, or if you dragged it along a rough surface. It takes it from being a system that only provides visual feedback, being able to see the surgery, to also feeling it with your hands and hearing it, which is a big step forward in the technology.
Remember the principal at Catherine's school? The one who gave her a new pencil and said math needs great tools? Surgery needs great tools too. But this time, Catherine's the one handing out the tools. vibro-touch has enormous potential, and not just in the operating room. People training to become dentists could practice drilling for cavities without having to practice on a live patient. Medical interns can experience the feeling of pushing an epidural needle through the different layers of tissue in a patient's back. They can practice as many times as they want without putting anyone at risk. And then there's that other thing you've been wondering about. Don't try to deny it. All this talk about touching and vibrations and stroking corduroy and so on. You're wondering about more pleasurable applications, more intimate applications?
You know, that's not an application I've worked on at all, and no one's approached me about it. It's actually very, very challenging to replicate direct touch, what it feels like for, say, a person to reach across the table and touch your wrist or touch your shoulder, because there are so many different sensations overlaid. There's the distribution of pressures, there's the temperature, there's the motion, and frankly, it's just really, really challenging to create an engineered system that can replicate that large of a range of sensations.
To learn more about Catherine Kuchenbecker's work, visit our website, cbc.ca/outoftheirminds. You can also download podcasts of other shows. This is Out of Their Minds on CBC Radio and across North America on Sirius 159. I'm Richard Serrett. Let's move on to our second touch-sensitive story. It stars this woman.
Oh, hi, Blake. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Nice weight.
Yeah,
Wow, nice.
Thank you.
This is Elizabeth Morris. She's an actor, a teacher, and a comedian. She's also deaf and has been since birth.
What would you like me to do? Sit or?
Yeah, sit and describe.
Oh, you want me to go first? Oh, because you want to see my reaction.
Elizabeth invited me along on a recent trip to the Smart Lab at Ryerson University in Toronto. The folks there had invited her to try out the Emoto-chair. That's a special chair that enhances a deaf person's musical experience.
My younger brother is profoundly deaf, and I know he will enjoy this because he hears nothing, right? And my mother grew up in a musical family, so it was a heartbreaking for her that my brother couldn't hear music. But I think this is like an eye-opening. This is what music feels. You know that feeling like, oh, I get it. This is music.
The Emoto-chair looks like your basic fold-up camping chair, except it's got all sorts of tiny speakers and vibrators sewn into the back and armrests. It basically turns your back into an ear. Now, this isn't Elizabeth's first time in the Emoto-chair. As part of a study project, she's test-driven all the early prototypes. Her first experience was particularly memorable.
When I sat on it, suddenly, because it was so loud, I thought my butt was on fire. It was kind of painful, but then I realized I could have let the lady know, can you put it down? Because some people love a strong vibration. Some people like light vibration. For me, I prefer light.
On this day at the Smart Lab, the volume is set a bit too low.
At the moment, I only feel on my back, not on the bottom of the chair. I'm not sure why, but I also can feel it up to my shoulder. Even though my shoulder's not on the chair, but I can feel it up to my shoulder.
Do you feel the bass lower on your back?
No, it's all up here.
Frank Russo runs the Smart Lab and is one of the inventors of the Emoto-chair. He's a professor of psychology at Ryerson, but he loves working on projects that are, in his words, at the intersection of mind, music, and technology.
The Emoto-chair is a project we've been working on for some time. It's a co-invention. Essentially, it's a means of taking sound and presenting it as vibration. There are many reasons for doing this. One is providing access to music for people with hearing loss, people who are deaf. Another benefit is that it provides this new, rich experience for how to experience music. It's not just sound, there's this vibratory component.
The technology is fairly simple. An audio signal is broken down into different frequencies. And those frequencies are then sent to the different speakers on the chair. It's sort of like a full body vibrator.
So where would 500 hertz be?
250 to 500 hertz are the most tactile ranges. So say, for example, in the chair that we're using, that would be somewhere just above the butt line, as it were.
This is Dr. Maria Karam, a co-designer of the chair. She's also the CEO of Tactile Audio Displays.
What about 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz zone?
We do a high-pass filter for that. So the 1 and 2 kilohertz are going to be typically closer to the bottom of your body. So, the back of your legs where you have a higher concentration of skin and more sensitive. It's a lot more sensitive to these high frequencies. That's where we would place the top bands. Now, if we really wanted to break it out, for example, we have the arms, then what we'd be looking at is anything over 2,500 hertz would be on your hands, around your fingertips, and we'd sort of move in as the frequencies got lower towards the inner core of your body.
The idea of using vibration to give deaf people the experience of music is not new. When Beethoven lost his hearing, he cut the legs off his piano and put the soundboard right on the floor. Frank Russo.
He actually would lay down on the floor, put his body against the soundboard, and feel the music through his body. If you should head to a present-day deaf rave, you'll find deaf kids in clubs who are putting their bodies right up against a speaker. Why are they doing this? They want to internalize the beat, they want to feel the rhythm, and then they'll get out there on the dance floor. The bass will be pumped to incredibly loud levels, and they'll also be feeling it through their feet and through the floorboards.
The Smart Lab has commissioned a few composers to write special songs for the chair. In fact, you're listening to one of them right now. The lab has also hosted live concerts and schlepped the chairs out to parks for public performances. It's taken a while, but Frank Russo and his team have finally figured out which elements of music work best on the chair. A sweeping melody, for example, works well.
Celine Dion would work great because of her multi-octave range. So what you would get by experiencing something that Celine Dion performed in the chair is, if we map the chair perfectly to her voice, you would get the low end of her voice on one part of your body, and you'd get the high end of her voice on another part of your body. So you'd get the movement that is implied by the melody. So I think when you're listening to melody, you on some level, there's an implied sense of movement that's always happening. You really get that sense of movement in the chair when you're feeling a voice move across that multi-octave range.
Frank Russo and Maria Karam have high hopes for the Emoda chair. They plan to market it to the hearing community, to gamers, and for use in home theaters. But in spite of the commercial possibilities, it's the connection to the deaf community that seems to drive the researchers. Here's Gabe Nespoli, Research Operations Coordinator for Ryerson's Psychology Department.
Music is such a wonderful and beautiful thing that it seems unfortunate that some people can't experience it. You know, you start to think about what it actually means to be deaf and be congenitally deaf from birth, and you've never heard music. You have no idea what, a rich media it is. Bringing something so amazing and beautiful to someone who's never experienced it before, I think is exciting and rewarding.
Elizabeth Morris couldn't agree more.
I go to concerts all the time, and I feel I'm missing something. I hear something, but I feel like, I want to be part of the community. Everybody go, yeah, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't hear enough. So I think it's wonderful that they developed this project to give deaf community a chance to enjoy music.
What artist are you hoping will really work in the chair so that you can gain a greater appreciation?
Okay, I know there's an artist, but he's new, and a lot of girls are into his music, and he's young. Justin Bieber?
Elizabeth teaches deaf kids in high school, and many of her students love the Biebs. So she wants to know what the fuss is all about. Frank Russo surprises everyone by admitting he has some Bieber on his iPod.
Okay, I'm kind of...
We've always got Bieber ready.
Yes, everybody, yes.
What song?
Okay, one time, why not? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, it's nice because right now it feels like I want to start dancing, even though I can't hear it or see it. But I feel his music that makes me want to dance and get up and dance. Wow, that's nice. I love it.
There's a footnote to this story. It may seem like a leap to go from entertainment to therapy, but during the chair's development, hundreds of people tried it out, including a number of autistic children. And for some reason, the chair seemed to have a calming influence on those kids. Again, here's Frank Russo.
We've observed that they don't want to get out of this thing. They're wrapped up in the experience. So what we've done is we've taken the chair and we've put it into a vest.
It's called the Vibe Vest.
With some colleagues in fashion at Ryerson, they've actually created a vest that clings to the body, and we've inserted all the same hardware and a circuit board that does all the same processing that our chair does.
Let's say you're the parent of an autistic child. Here's how the Vibe Vest could help. You wear a wireless lapel mic, and it transmits your voice to a receiver in the vest your child is wearing. When you speak, the vest vibrates. This deepens the signals being transmitted to your child. It's speculated that this helps activate the child's mirror neuron system. According to Frank Russo, that's the part of the brain that allows us to share the emotions other people are feeling. It's linked to empathy. Children with autism are believed to have a deficit in this area of the brain.
What we know about this mirror neuron system is that it seems to respond preferentially to congruent multimodal stimulation. So if
In other words...
in other words, the vibration adds another layer of richness that we think is supportive. So what we've seen is that over brief exposures using this vest, we seem to have increased conjoint attention. And what I mean by that is that mother and infant will pay attention to the same thing for an extended periods of time. We are both thinking about the same thing at the same time for extended periods of time. It seems that that experience is enhanced and prolonged with use of the vest.
That was Frank Russo, professor of psychology, and he runs the SMART Lab at Ryerson University. SMART stands for Science of Music, Auditory Research, and Technology. That wraps up today's show. It was produced by Charles Kedgebaugh with help from Meg Wilcox. To learn more about the stories you heard or to grab any of our podcasts, head to our website, cbc.ca/outoftheirminds. Next week, we'll fire up our flux capacitor and travel back in time with Professor Ronald Mallett. I'm Richard Sarrett. Thanks for listening.